Good evening. Can y'all hear me? We'll get this thing fired off. I want to thank y'all for coming. We're going to start off with some introductions. I think I got some people still out in the hall. If y'all can join us. So going around the room here, we have Chief Travis Terrio, our HPD chief. Chief Corey Henry, our fire department chief. Earl Hughes, emergency preparedness. Scotty Dryden, operations manager, public works. Dean Swess, I don't think he's in here. He's the guy in the front with the bright shoes. He's in charge of the sports park and Civic Center. Miss Kayla Broussard, right here, communications. Mr. Ryan Melanson, a guy in the back with the camera. Also communications. I really thank them. They do a great job of helping us put this together. Mr. Hillary Domain, our quality of life director. I don't think he's, oh, here he is right there. Hillary Domain. Ernie Brown, in charge of utilities, power and gas. That's the guy right there. Chris Pulaski, planning and zoning. Dana Ortego, insurance manager, risk management. Mark Black, coastal restoration, protection. Ms. Candace Malden is the CFO. Leilani Adams, who is my chief of staff. Noah Lee Red, who's my chief administrative officer. And then we're also excited to be joined by Ms. Kim Chauvin, council member, and Mr. Danny Babin, council member. So thank you all for, thank my team for being here. So this is Town Hall, and basically what I do is it's important to me to make sure our residents' voices are heard. I always ask this question. I have a presentation that I love to go through to give an update of where we're at and what's going on, or we could just jump straight into answering questions. As we go through the slide presentation, at every slide I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions. You can ask a question any time. It's real informal. Kim only gets 2 tonight, and she's already used one of them. She don't realize that yet. No, but so again, we could go through the presentation. We could just start answering questions. I'm good either way. Is there a preference with the crowd? Presentation? Yeah? Questions? We'll go presentation. And so it's about 30 minutes or so. And we just talk about what's going on in Terrebonne Parish. We are here a year and 7 months into my first term. And so I like the conversation around recovery, resiliency, and revitalization, right? We look at recovery. We're still recovering from Ida. We're still recovering from Francine. Resiliency, as we continue to battle on and fight every issue that comes into our area. We're a very resilient community. I think it's important to talk about some of those things. And then revitalization, right? Getting things refreshed, renewed, and moving forward. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So I like to start with talking about rebuilding projects post-Ida, right? 4 years after the storm, we're coming on the anniversary here. We're still dealing with the fact that we have properties that were damaged. Us, like residents, are still dealing with the effects of Ida. So the Air Base Fire Station on the east side, which was off Grand Caillou, we call it the little Hershey Kiss that you see on the road right now. That's been awarded and anticipated completion of February 2026 to put the full-time fire station back on the east side. The Civic Center, of which we're in right here, was going well. Francine hit, tore off the temporary roof of it. The temporary roof of the power plant got ripped off, so we're having to go through and redo some things. So we're working here with weather delays going on. You can see some work going on outside, and hopefully that'll be done sooner than later. Municipal Auditorium, if you hadn't been to that facility yet, I recommend you go check it out. It looks amazing in there. You got new lights, new tile, really just like a completely different building. And due to the fact that it's related to Ida is the Buquet Bridge, you can see we have some work going on site, and we're working on having that running by the third quarter of 26. We're going to have to close marine traffic the 28th through the 30th because of the work that has to be done around the lift span and getting that removed. And so that's what we kind of have going on, still remnants of post-Ida. We had opened up the first and second floor of the government tower this past January, and that helps us run a little more efficiently getting planning and zoning and groups back into the tower. So I see Kim looks like her face had a question. Yes. Right. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Noah, you hearing that? They're supposed to open the season August 1st. So. if we're going to close it, that they. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Any questions on this before I move forward? All right. So going on the next slide. Power plant, it is part of IDA. That's why it's the next slide. That was damaged for IDA. Again, the roof got ripped off again for Francine. We've been working with FEMA. So the parish carried $65 million worth of insurance when IDA hit. With that, when you look at the power plant alone, that's a $170 million project. So we have no choice but to work with FEMA. And again, you end up where you're 4 years down the road, you're having conversations about, is this damage past 50%? Because that's what determines whether they rebuild or repair. And so going through the process with FEMA, with the power plant, we're in a 200 megawatt pocket from Morgan City to New Orleans. Of that, 80 megawatts was powered by the power plant in Terrebonne Parish. When you look at the fact that we have a plant and what it supports, the three main facilities that I think are important to know, even though a resident might not live in the city power area, is that it manages the hospital, the water plant, and the airport, right? Those are three important features that help FEMA understand and determine that we needed a new power plant when they rebuild that power plant. They can only bring it back to 80 megawatts. We can't go more than that. But with the technology we're going to put into it, we have the ability to expand past that in the future to maybe even go as high as 140, 160 megawatts. So we have the footprint and the availability with technology to do that. You can see that we have temporary generators that FEMA is paying for. We had to go through a process they denied originally. They came back and approved it. You can see how many hours that the generators have been called upon. A lot of times, again, related to temperatures. If we didn't have the temporary generators, we could be dealing with rolling brownouts. But so the generators allow, which is about 20 megawatts of power to cover for in that situation. And then related to IDA, we had 847 system-wide line repairs that had to get done, 140 right off the bat with major damage. And the other 600, which I'll talk about in the next slide, is stuff that we worked on after that. And then Francine came in and kind of messed that up a little bit also. So I think it's important for everybody to understand what's going on in the power plant, why it hadn't started yet. Anything with FEMA, you can't spend $1 till they approve it. If you spend $1, they won't reimburse. Everything is reimbursable, so we got to spend the money and get paid back. And then for historical purposes, FEMA doesn't get involved until the insurance situation is done. So we had to sue our insurance company for that $65 million. That got settled in 23, beginning of 24. That's when FEMA really can step in and work through what part they're going to cover. And that's what some of the projects that you're dealing with right now that are not parish related, like the DA's offices, there's 2 of them, Bayou Towers, they're still going through the process to understand if those are 50% damaged or not. So Center Circle's not quite that far yet. So when you look at Bayou Towers and the 2 DA buildings, they're at the 50% review. With the Center Circle properties, they're considered each property as its own claim. And they're going through that process for each property. Right. So, all right. Any questions on the power plant? Yes, sir. So, one of the things that, and I've just kind of learned as I've watched, is a lot of times things will get said that are way out here and kind of get brought back. Everything that we're having conversations about right now is that everything that we're looking to get reimbursed for and get obligated, it's still going to be done that way. They have had some turnover. People have taken the buyout, so some of that stuff is running a little bit slower. At the end of the day, I think we're looking at the fact that we're 4 years after the storm, still waiting on money. So of the $250 million we were obligated, we've collected half, and we still need another 105 obligated for the power plant. At this point, I'm open to change, right? At some point, things got to flow faster. My conversation has been about, if you look historically at how much damage a storm has caused, if you have a Category 4 storm and on average it's between $10 and $15 billion, why can't 75% of that money or 25% of that money just come out right off the bat, right? The fact that we're still kind of going back and forth, is this going to be replaced? Is it going to be repaired? Some of that stuff, it doesn't make sense. And projects over a certain dollar amount, so I met with FEMA in February in DC. At that time, when I'm going through our list of projects and then projects over for the DA, Housing Authority, just trying to get an understanding of where everything is, they were like, $30 45 days, 45, 60 days, right? Here we are. Of those, half have been moved forward. The other half, I'm any day kind of now situation, and we're July, right? And so they're saying it's this amount of time. Well, we learned that if a project's over $1 million, and I think they've dropped that threshold to $100,000, it's got to go to the Corps of Engineers Center for Cost Efficiency so they could double check the numbers. On the power plant, we came up 170, FEMA came up 171. I'm like, let's go. No, it's got to go here, it's got to go there. That's another 60 days, that's another 45 days. That's the part that I think is going to end up shaking out and changing a little bit with, again, if they try to say, we're going to get rid of it all together, and they go, well, no, let's keep it. Well, then we need to make these improvements to help make it flow better because, again, we're still waiting on funding. So here we are. Yes. Well, look, Francine, again, messed the temporary roof on this place, temporary roof in the power plant, even though that temporary roof don't matter like this temporary roof does. But that's when you start dealing with Francine, you start dealing with a different bucket of money. They can't mix. I mean, it's a document nightmare is the best way to kind of explain it. And I look at this, I look at FEMA and like DOTD with the state are probably the two most bureaucratic agencies that we've dealt with. And those are the two you see right now where people are turning around, talking about flipping upside down on their head because it's time for things to change, With DOTD, one of the stats that we received from one of our representatives was, if you compare to the rest of the country, if they bid projects out, in all the other states, 80% of the projects that were bid actually became projects. In Louisiana, it was 23% for DOTD. So again, there's some things that just hadn't been working. It's time to do some things differently. So we are a sub-district of New Orleans. Well, and we got Archie's going to be the Louisiana Road Construction czar, I guess you could say. And him and I are on the same page that we need to be our own district, and I think we have the best opportunity for that to happen now. So, yeah. So you're talking about undoing something that's been there 30 years, So, any other questions before I move forward? And again, feel free to answer questions at any time. So, system-wide line repairs. You can see what we have with Ida. We only got 2 work orders that are left. We had 386 total for Francine that have all been completed. So, for a period of time, I want to say the first 6 months of 24, we went through about 30 outages. Those outages were related to issues that were caused due to Ida and then caused again with Francine. And I think our team's done a real good job. But one of the things I think is important to understand that our power system kind of works just like your house. If somebody plugs something into a GFC with water on it, it trips. The power outage that we had that maybe lasted, I was like 15, 20 seconds on a Sunday a couple weeks back was because the energy feed we have got struck by lightning, right? No matter what you do, some situations, God's got a different idea. And so you're going to have stuff like that. But whenever something trips or if a substation has an issue, that breaker trips, we got to go flick it back on. And when we flick it back on, make sure it doesn't flick off again. And if it flicks off again, we got to go down that line and figure out where the issue is. But sometimes we flick it back on and it comes back on, just like you'd have at your house, right? Your dryer trips your breaker, you go flip your breaker, everything's back working, you don't have any problems ever again. Very similar concept to how our power plant situation, Ernie, is that too basic? Is that good? That hit the nail on the head? Perfect. All right. Any questions on this before I move forward? All right. CDBG Recovery. So, again, related to Ida, this is hurricane recovery funds that we're just going through the process of trying to get some of these projects kicked off 4 years after the storm. The applications were due November of 2024. We turned in all the applications. There were questions. You got to get a study done first, and then we're going to do the actual project itself. When I go through some of the ones that were awarded, I'll explain that. But they're telling us that the projects must be funded and completed by November of 27. We know that some projects are going to take longer. We're understanding there may be some kind of extension at some point. Right now, we're still going through the process of getting these projects approved. It's got to be related to either resiliency and or economic development and be in a low to moderate income area. We're working on a public facing site that we're making some tweaks on today so that everybody could see, here's the project, here's the area it covers, here's the area that it benefits, and this is the timeline for the project. So once we get those all tweaked out and worked out, we're going to have it public facing where everybody can see what I'm going to talk about here on our next slide, which is the projects that we've been approved for. So we still have some projects that we're going through the application process. And on the community center, resilience centers right here, they said, you know, we applied for a certain amount of money. So we submitted plans for everything. As we submitted plans for everything, they would come back with questions. Well, in the community center one, they said, we want you to do a study first, and then you're going to fill out an application to how to address the things you found in the study. So say, for example, we find that we need 20 community centers, or we need 10 community centers. The funding we have might cover 2, maybe 3, depending on what's chosen and where it's at, how big it is. So with the study, we're going to have an understanding of what it would cost to do all, and then we'll have some funding to maybe do the first 1, 2, or 3 projects, and then know if we want to do project 4, this is what it costs, project 5. No different than to support the seafood industry, where we wanted to give some funding to help the seafood industry. They said, we're going to do funding, study, funding. They said, no, funding for study first, funding second, right? So that's how we're going back and forth with OCD, how the communication happens on, like historically, which we haven't been approved yet, like for small business grants. The mechanism for how you would handle that through this funds. To keep in mind, this is HUD funding coming through OCD at the state. So OCD is managing the program, but they have to meet the HUD requirements. And if we don't meet the HUD requirements, then we have to send that money back. And so as you go through all these different kinds of projects, this is stuff that's been collected with studies that date back to 2020, 2022. And so, for example, community centers, when we did our town halls just like this, over time when we were asking for feedback, community centers was one of the things that was listed the most. They don't like the word community centers, so we had to name resiliency centers, right? Those are the things that we do to work through what they say we can use the money for and how you work through that whole process. And so you can see that all this stuff's been approved. The wastewater master plan, the stormwater master plan are going to be studies to understand, for example, with wastewater, if I have this neighborhood or this street or these houses, I have 2 places to account for when it comes to sewage. One is where it starts at and where it finishes. So we have 2 plants. We have a north plant, we have a south plant. So when I'm going to add this neighborhood, this street, or these houses, I got to know on the front side, this has to be done in the neighborhood side, but on the plant side, I also have to add more capacity. That's what that wastewater master plan is going to tell us. The stormwater master plan is going to tell us if these are areas that need better drainage, this area needs to be under forced drainage. This is what it would look like the cost to do that. And that's where you look at every different kind of project you can imagine. The Bayou Terrebonne Bayou Game Burn project is a retention base for holding water. We have a couple other projects, the STEAM Center, which originally was called an amphitheater, then called a museum. That's a skilling area for both STEM and arts, right? That's what STEAM stands for. So for kids to have the opportunities, we're looking at locating Bayou STEM and Bayou Regional Arts Council in the building, have a covered performance area, but for people to go no matter the age and get skills on robotics and just anything related to science, technology, engineering, and math. That's what that facility is going to offer the opportunity of. And not only just because it's going to exist downtown, it's going to be something that says, as we work, especially through these other community centers, taking these resources out into the community to where people don't have to come to the center home of everything. That's where it originates. That's where we have an opportunity to have things go on, but that we go out to the communities and provide these different resources. And so you can see, I mean, you got a small business program incubator. Bayou Lafourche Pump Station is actually a water plant project to get more water for the water system that we drink out of every day. We have a water line that's going from the west to the east side that's going to feed the standpipe by Rouse's, by Prospect. And the opportunity for that pipe is that we had a break the other day around Audemars Street, and we lost a lot of water pressure. This is going to feed that standpipe directly to hopefully keep that water pressure up. So again, this is all through studies and history of gathering info of what's needed or wanted by the parish and how we implement this. This is all stuff that we have to spend every dollar on these projects first. And once we spend it, we get reimbursed. So if we do an appraisal on a building, we can only buy a building if whatever it appraises for. We can't buy it for more than that. Once we pay for the services to do the appraisal and that goes to that process, then we can submit that stuff for reimbursement. So as we're doing these projects, we're spending the money and getting reimbursed. But the whole issue, the whole rule is that these are 5-year sustaining projects. So if, for example, The aviation program at Fletcher, if there's a problem with Fletcher running that program, the parish government has to make sure that program continues to run, even though Fletcher maybe has an issue where they can't do it. Fletcher goes out of business. Not that they would, but just using that as an example. So, again, you can see a lot of projects on here, a lot of opportunity. Activate the bayou dredging and deepening. We're working on Bayou Terrebonne. The next two bayous under this plan is going to be Bayou DeLarge or Bayou Grand Caya. Healthy waterways, getting rid of silt, getting rid of debris, getting rid of trees. You can see if you go down Grand Caya right now, there's a project that we started not far after the pump station there of some things we're trying to do to get prepped for some of this work right here. So it's a lot, you know, and I had a conversation this morning about the fact that some of the hoops you have to jump in through for this money makes you not want to collect this money. And I had a conversation this morning with an architect / engineer we deal with every day, going something as simple as we submitted something. So a lot of times if you do something, you got to put it out for public comment. And then we do that and they go, well, you didn't fill out this form. You got to go back and fill out this form and put it out again. And we're like, it's just crazy. That's the bureaucracy of it. So we had to have a conversation that says, we did what we were supposed to do. Somebody else didn't do what they were supposed to do. So as far as we're concerned, we've done this so we can go to bid for that project or issue a notice to proceed. So there's a lot of bureaucracy around this and getting this funding, because at the end of the day, if we don't bid something and get 3 quotes, we could have to pay that money back. And so that's one of the things that we have to make sure that we're very diligent and that we work through the process to make sure that these things are done right. We have consultants that are helping us with this. That's part of the process of getting these grants. And in a situation where, for example, one of our projects we were going after was to have a new jail built. We were going to use some brick funding to do that. Trump got rid of the brick funding, which again, we applied for that. That wasn't a guarantee we were going to get it. But as soon as we understood it wasn't available, we can really reallocate that money to other projects. And that's the kind of stuff that happens where even some of the projects that are still not approved yet, we might have a situation where we have to go through that process. But everything we do has to get approved by OCD before us to take that next step. So that's CDBGDR, and that's one of the things that we're excited about because I do believe it's an opportunity. I feel like it is an economic shot in the arm for, again, unfortunately, small business grants. It's not on there, but like small business program incubator, things that businesses could have used 4 years ago after Ida. We're just getting the funding to do some of this stuff now, but I also kind of believe it's better late than never. Any questions on this before I move forward? No? Okay. Capital outlay. So again, another funding opportunity. This is a situation where taxes that are collected go to Baton Rouge. From Baton Rouge, we go to them and say, I need some projects funded. So in order, starting from the left-hand side over here, is some of these, like that Brady Road Bridge project has been with capital outlay probably 5 years now. And situations have happened where you've gotten the money and the money got pulled back, and then you got some more money, it got pulled back. We just finally, hopefully, it's as it lays out, because we're still waiting on some data from some documents from the state, that we're going to be able to get the Brady Road Bridge built. But the Bayou Carp, the Valhalla Roundabout, Industrial Park, Dulac, West Houma, Valhalla Extension, some of these, as you get further down the line, the stuff closer to the top is the stuff that's mostly funded, right? So in some situations, for West Side Alma, I'm looking for $1.4 million. For the Industrial Boulevard Pump Station, I think I'm looking for like $2.8 million. So every opportunity, when we go up there and have conversations, I need a little bit more money here, a little bit more money there. There's a process where, like the last 5 or 6 were stuff that were added this year. Nothing ever gets funded the first year. It goes into what they call Priority 5, and then the goal is try to get everything moved from Priority 5 to Priority 1. But in a situation with Brady Road Bridge, we end up with some money in Priority 2, and if it's in 1 and in 2, we can actually go to bid for the project. And some of it is direct money. Some of it is the state's got to sell bonds. And when they sell those bonds, we're able to get funding for these projects. So this is a list that I've worked on since I got here. Representatives involved, council members involved, our directors involved. Do we all agree these are priorities? And then again, this year, my main goal was to get the first 4 or 5 funded. Now, stuff like the Industrial Boulevard Pump Station, I'm looking at some bonding opportunities. I'm looking at working with CPRA. There are other opportunities that we can work through. The Hollywood Valhalla Roundabout, I was able to get that fully funded. The Bayou Car pump station, again, that's something else. I'm just looking for a little bit of funding to finish that project. That's the project that pumps the water out by Popeyes, is what that project is right there. But you can see just a bunch of different opportunities, and some of it is somebody said, hey, I'd love to have this funded, like the Air Base Park and Softball Complex, which is a park that the parish took over to convert that to more like the East Side Bayou Country Sports Park. But again, some of that stuff is down the line. I know like the miter gates are both funded from an engineering perspective, pretty much the whole thing. But some of that, like all this stuff right here, we have to match. So FEMA's match, for example, on the power plant, I give that as a great example, $170 million project. Our insurance deductible is $33 million. Our match, I think, is $14 million on that one, if I'm not mistaken, that we got to match because FEMA's a 90-10 split. And at this level, it's more like a 75-25. So even though the state's going to put up 100,000, we got to come up with 25,000 of that 100. Like if they say we're going to award this 100, we got to come up with 25,000 of that. And so this is, again, capital outlay, another funding opportunity with CDBGDR. And it seems like every pot of money that we get in lately, I can't use it for roads and bridges, as crazy as it may sound. And it changes. So for Gustav Ike, with CDBGR funds, they did some stuff with housing. For IDA, it changed. They created the Louisiana Housing Corporation. We got a few projects I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But when it came to housing, that all went through them and didn't come through the parish. And so sometimes what you do in one storm is different. And I say it's different bad, but just different because they might have said, well, this didn't work. Was a better way. Maybe it was a better mousetrap. Maybe it was another different opportunity. And so that's how a lot of this funding works. And, you know, the whole thing of free money, and when I talk to Candace about getting grants, she goes, yeah, the biggest problem with grants is we got to have a match. We received a grant for this building to do something with solar panels. Our match was $3 million. I'm not spending $3 million on solar panels, right? But now we're having a conversation that says solar panels doesn't have hadn't gathered the attention or been chosen as an option. Now they're having a conversation about converting that to maybe more of a power generation, even a microgrid type solution for a building like this. So that's some of the stuff that we're looking at that we can do. Any questions on capital outlay before I move forward? All right. Housing crisis. So we kind of talked about a little bit about this with Senator Circle. Trying to work with the Housing Authority and HUD. The fact that we have 4 years after the storm, we do not have an understanding of how many residents that lived in Senator Circle and or the housing tower, how many of those people need housing right now? That's the question I keep asking. I hadn't been able to get an answer. Is it 25? Is it 100? Is it 500? Because we had 300 in Bayou Towers, another 225 or 250 in Senator Circle. Where are those people at? How many people have passed? How many people aren't coming back? And so I know they had around 28 million that they collected on insurance. I'm like, go build 25 units somewhere. So where the parish works, and there was something, I want to say it might have been the West Tunnel loss. There was something that there was in the paper about $1 million grant that we give with West Tunnel loss. Well, the parish identifies a housing issue or a housing need. And so you're looking at 4 projects that the parish is involved in that's going to address about 300 housing units. And what we do is every time we do a project like this and money gets loaned out and money gets paid back to us, we put into another project. So the West Tunnel Loss project, that $1 million came from housing stuff we had already done and money that we've collected through those projects. And we just turn around and put it right back into housing. We can't use it anywhere else. But when you look at the fact that within the next 18 to 24 months, we can potentially have 300 housing units to address the shortage of 800 affordable housing units in the parish. That's the number we show right now, that there's an 800 unit shortage of affordable housing. This is what the parish is doing to help address that need. Along working with South Central Planning, they have some erector set homes that has an opportunity with some lower insurance because they're basically metal stud manufactured. So they basically make the studs and everything, and then they build a house. Where one opportunity is that it's going to be more cost effective. The second opportunity is to be rated up to 200 miles an hour, which is real good with some insurance opportunities that they're working on. And we're donating some adjudicated property. So if a property gets seized and somebody didn't pay for something and it becomes a parish property, we're giving it to South Central Planning and saying, build these homes on it and provide another opportunity for residents to have affordable housing. And also the opportunity with those homes to maybe even have affordable insurance on top of that. So, any questions on this before I move forward? Yes, ma'am. I do not know. I do not know, and I get, that's why I've been trying to get that answer. I wasn't able to get that answer, so right, yeah. So I'm kind of curious that once we get our 300 units built, because again, if anything starts now, it's going to be 2 or 3 years down the road before it's habitable. What's going to be the need in 2 or 3 years? That's the question that I can't get answered, that I would love somebody to help me with. So you could. My concern would be if if you have residents spread across the country, how do they get the data? I would understand the housing authorities tracking that. And look, I'll be upfront and honest. I couldn't get the answers I wanted. It changed every time. In my authority, I tried to get them removed because I felt like there should be done, more should be done. The vote didn't go my direction. So at this point, I don't know what else I can do from a point that I appoint people to the housing board, but for me to remove them, I have to have cause. I tried cause. It didn't work. The only thing that happens now is if somebody gets off the board or passes away, which is what happened already, then I can put who I'd like to have on that board. Until then, if anybody else can get the information, I'd love to have it. At the end of the day, we have an 800 housing unit shortage, and we have 300 units that the parish is going to help facilitate. What does the rest of that look like? Do people not have homes for the next 5 years? That's all stuff that I feel like we're just not able to get the information on. And that's all I'm looking for at the end of the day is. Right. Right. I mean, if 500 something people, how many people want to come back, can't come back, have passed away? Again, is it 25, 50, 100, 500? Right now, we're working as a parish to address those 300. And again, this is stuff that all that's running through the Louisiana Housing Corporation. That's how they're handling housing post Ida. Different storm. Hopefully, we don't have another one. Knock on wood. But that's kind of dealing with the hand we're dealt right now. And hopefully, my goal at the end of the day is just address the housing issue. You know, when we talk about people that are homeless, I think we're somewhere around 50 right now. Some of the work that we've done on behavioral health, mental health, and addiction. You know, again, some of the people that are homeless right now, is that related to this crisis? That's the information that we hadn't been able to gather to date. So, anybody else? A question? Right. 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 Or the housing authority that has the information on the residents. That's the other option too, by the way. Anyway. Yeah. Right. Right. And that's what I'm saying. I think it's important to understand we had 550 residents before. How many do we need to build housing for right now? What if by the time we finish this 300, the housing crisis was addressed? Then what do we need the housing authority for? At the end of the day, that's a question we ask, right? But again, people lived in those facilities. I think they want to come home to those facilities. And right now, and they're working with FEMA. Same problem I addressed earlier. They're working with FEMA. They do have some funds, and I think there's an opportunity. What I've been able to find is that if you go to FEMA and say, look, I'm trying to get this done. I need this. Is there a way to get this done? In some situations, we've been able to. In some situations, we haven't. It just depends on the issue. But I think at the end of the day, we should have a plan. I think there should be a number. Right now, if we were to fill housing, it would be X amount of people right now. Let's build for that, right? Because traditionally, HUD's not doing like the towers anymore, right? It is more of that center to circle concept. So if they don't tear down that building, that's something that has to be discussed. If they do tear down that building, are you even able to build back right there? Where else do you build? But again, it's just trying to get a plan of how many people need housing. That's what I think is the most important part of that whole deal. Yes, ma'am. Parkwood Place is off East Street. On that one has started, Parkwood Place. Late 25 is when it's going to start. No, so what's interesting on that property, we had to get approval from the housing corporation because they didn't want to build because of the flood zone, but allowing the houses to be built up in that flood zone. So, right. But we had to get an exception approved, right? We tried, they said no. Right. 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 All right. Any more questions on this? All right. Moving on. Economic development. So we've talked a lot of little doom. I say a lot, some doom and gloom, some issues we've been through, right? But we're turning the corner and we're in a conversation about resiliency. One of the things that I'm proud to announce, and I got to give 70% of the credit to Senator Mike Fazy because he's really worked on this NeuroIO project, which is right here at the Old Courier. Some AI, some medical technology. Unfortunately, a project that was dropped by LED that they were supposed to handle and they didn't. So Mike kind of came in and helped, and myself and him, Tita, CoLab, all worked together to get this pushed over the finish line. It's a Swedish company. And they have marks that are set that if they achieve, there's some funding they can get. But if they don't reach those marks, they don't get the funding. But they're looking to locate here. And that's a $100 million innovation campus, which I think is a great opportunity, again, for skilling. When I look at the steam engine, it's for stuff like this, right? It's the, for those that may not know, I feel like I'm kind of a poster child of LMI. I grew up in a trailer. I don't have a college degree. I'm self-taught in business and tech. Tech built the road that I traveled to get where I am today. That's where I look at with the steam engine is that if there are other kids out there, when we do the esports summer camps, which you're actually going to have here this coming month, I think end of this month, beginning next month, to put $3,000 computers in the hands of kids that would maybe never touch it is an opportunity to show them a potential path. At the same time, we do leadership, management, conversation, all the soft skill stuff. And so that's why I think it's so important for stuff like the steam engine is to have the opportunity for kids to do this, or to maybe fly drones at the airport. Again, just opportunities for skilling our youth. And anybody else too. Anybody else of any age has the opportunity to maybe try a new career and go to something. We have that aviation building that we're talking about. They'd be teaching aviation mechanic work and stuff. A lot of opportunities for our residents. So we have that. We have an EDA waterline grant that we were able to get. Martin Luther King Westside Boulevard, where you see there's an area that's not very developed because it doesn't have utilities. So we're able to get a grant that's going to put some utilities there. It's related to the wellness center that Terrebonne General is going to be building. But by doing that, again, we're going to have some opportunities for things to be developed, so construction jobs. Windy Bank Building is something that the parish bought at the end of 23. That's going to be a government and business complex partnership. DA in there, police in there, Windy Bank's still in there. So an opportunity for us to get more foot traffic downtown. And every time you get foot traffic downtown and you build up the heart of the parish, which is Houma, it makes a big difference for the rest of the parish. We have the Fletcher Workforce Building in Schriever, right? The fact that at this day and time, we're still building workforce building opportunities. Nichols is building a nursing. Nichols also has the water coastal center that they're coming up with, right? A lot of opportunities for skilling. Cynthia, Louisiana, that's a little quiet. I was trying to get an update on that one today, but that's the project where they're looking to take lilies and turn it into everything from potted plants to OSB board, taking a nuisance of our area and turning it into a product. We have the health unit, which is bids will be in by the end of September. Building that's going to be, I think, better utilized as far as layout and opportunities. I know health units have a negative connotation, so I'm looking at something like the health unit at the Community Outreach Center, just to give it a different feel. And the American Legion, we were working on a renovation of that building to have that be a veterans assistance hub, that if veterans need anything and all the veterans groups can work out of that. That's the old American Legion building. So the bid should be in by the end of 25. Any questions on any of this? Yes, sir. So one of the problems with our Civic Center as it sits right now is we have about $1 million worth of repairs that we need to make outside of IDA. One of our bleacher sets, I think that's $800,000 alone. We got some drainage stuff going on around the outside. But the problem I deal with every day, or I say every day, but every year, is that we lose between $700,000 and $800,000 a year on our Civic Center. Now, it wasn't built to make money. And again, when you bring things here, like Jehovah's Witnesses is here for the 6th time, I think, this year, going to be here for 7 times this year. That brings in economic development. But at a situation where if the Civic Center lost less, that's more money I could use in general fund for other things and other, there's a few different, I say a few different, but 8, 10 departments that are funded through general fund. Historically, concerts haven't made money. My new hire, Mr. Hillary Domain, who's my director of Quality of Life, has dealt specifically with not being able to make money to having concerts in this facility, right? It's about what you pay a band and what you can charge for tickets and everything. One of the things that I'm looking at is I do think we need to raise the rates, and I tried to do that in one swoop, and it didn't pass. Maybe we didn't sell it right. Maybe we didn't get everybody to understand that the Civic Center loses between $700,000 and $800,000 a year, and I'm just trying to get it to lose less. So we're going to put it back up with a 10% increase a year over the next 3 years. There's a fund that is a group. It's like the Civic Center something organization foundation that they usually offer about $150,000 to fund events and hopefully get some things off the ground. I don't think we've touched that in 3 or 4 years. So we're always looking to do cool, different things here. To renovate, when you look at comparatively all the rest of the projects and things we're trying to get done with infrastructure, one of the things I asked Candace to do when I got here is put together a list of projects that are funded partially, fully, or not funded at all. As of right now, it's about 290 projects to the tune of about $770 million that we're still looking for $500 million worth of funding for. So my first goal is the Civic Center to lose less. And then from there, get some repairs done, hopefully get some modernization stuff kind of done. And then from there, try to get some other things to happen, Right. 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 Well, and one of the things that we run into as a limitation is if I put that kind of seating in, one of the things I think that does really well here that we wouldn't be able to have anymore or wouldn't be able to have as big of a footprint is something like the craft shows that we do, right? So it is a balance. The other thing is that we use this heavily for Mardi Gras, right? So the more seating we put in that's not movable then limits the layout that we have for that. So we try to keep, we got to do everything we can to keep this a multi-purpose facility. I feel like if you brought a band, it wouldn't matter what the seating was like if people wanted to see the band bad enough. But so far, we haven't been able to get that math right on making money with an event like that. That doesn't say we're going to quit. I'm just saying we're going to try to maybe do some things differently. And again, for Civic Center, it's booked a lot. Like I know I've tried to have events here, and it's booked pretty much every Friday and Saturday for the next 2 to 3 years. So the other part of that conversation is even if I want to have a concert, it have to be during the week, and I got to make sure it falls so it doesn't affect something else. But I definitely think it's something with the community that we can figure out some kind of partnership with this. And again, my Dancing with the Stars is going to be here. That place is going to be packed. That event sold out in 5 minutes, I think it was. Right? So we have events that are going on that fill it. But the problem is that it was cheaper for me to rent 3 rooms here than it was to rent some other buildings throughout the parish. And because of that, you can visibly see some things that need to be updated and worked on here that I feel like we have to address first before we can get into some of that other stuff. But appreciate you sharing, and it's all stuff. Again, Hillary's back there. He's listening, taking notes. Any opportunity is an opportunity, and we want to get to where this thing is fully rented all the time, and it's the best facility in the region, not being used because it's the only facility in the region, So hope that answers, hope that gives you information. Yeah. Right. Not yet. We don't own it yet. We're going through that process. Right. 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 Yeah, and that's the thing, though. Even the stuff. So Hillary used to work for the radio station, and they had bridal shows, they had concerts. It was hard to turn a profit, but a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, hey, if anybody can do it, though, I know it's that guy right there. You know, right, Hillary? Am I wrong on that? Yeah. Right. Yeah. I just wanted to turn a little bit less loss. That's what I got to deal with all the time, right? Yeah. But I appreciate her passion. So no, it's and that's what, again, we're gonna do a study. We're gonna figure out where those community centers are recommended, and I know there's some hot spots already, right? Chauvin's not one of them. No, I'm just joking. I'm just saying that because you hear. No, that's the thing. We're gonna get somebody to do a study. They're gonna figure out 1 through whatever needs to get done, and let's get the first one. Let's get the second one. Here's how much if we want to do one in Chauvin would cost. Let's figure out how to raise that money. Figure it out. I'm down. Yeah, I'm down. I mean, it's not like everybody's going to want it right next to their house, right? All right. A lot of positive conversation. I appreciate it. Going on to the next topic. Permits, I just like to share this. Permits take longer than they used to. We were around 3,000 before Ida, jumped up to almost 8,000. You can see we're trending back up to almost 6,000 permits. We got a lot of permits going on. And people think a lot of times the situation that permits are a negative thing. One of the things that we were approached by the insurance commissioner was, in the last 5 years, how many roofs have been replaced? And we were able to show, I think, it was somewhere over 80% of the roofs were replaced. That helps from a regional perspective to possibly reduce insurance, right? That's why we collect that kind of data and do these kind of things, because a lot of times we're able to turn that information over to somebody to support something we're fighting for. And at the same time, of the 6,000 generators, and again, a lot of this stuff maybe happened before permits, but as you go through a gas permit right now, we're going to try to understand if you have a big enough line, a big enough meter. Of the 140-ish issues we had during Francine, half of those were because they didn't have the right size meter, right size pipe, right size regulator. They maybe added a generator. We didn't know about it. But one of the things that we really learned is one tankless hot water heater actually pulls more gas than a generator. And I know, like, my house has got 3 of them. So that's why we do what we do. I'm not greedy. I know it's like hot water. I mean, it's pretty simple. I still don't get hot water in my sink in the kitchen. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, but to understand how many tankless heaters we got and how many generators we have helps Ernie go through the process. We're working on 2 projects right now, and I was had them listed later, but one is a gas line upgrade from 311 to Shea Drive, and then we've got 2 booster stations we're going to increase the gas pressure to, and they've been working on that since Ida, and this should be the issue that addresses Plantation Gardens, Summerfield, Terrebonne, the issues they've had historically with storms and gas. That project should fix those. But as people continue to add tankless and add heat generators and that kind of stuff, there's definitely more potential upgrades in the future. But that's something where by us having the data, or now how we go through the permit process, the reason why we collect that information is to make sure if you're getting a gas meter for whatever service, that we can provide gas to that meter and not have any issues like we're dealing with the system now. So we're going through an upgrade of Presque Isle and Country Drive. If there's any other issues that I might not be aware of, Ernie may have an idea. On gas?
Yeah.
I haven't heard of any issues in that area. Ernie, heard of any issues? Okay. Follow back up on that. We'll make a note and stuff like that. What's interesting is when there's a problem, we get phone calls. And I know what I'm saying is that like I had a conversation with David Rome. We talked about a light not working. And I was like, yeah, I got 2 or 3 calls. He goes, no, if the light's not working, we usually get about 1,000, right? So sometimes we gauge how big of an issue it is by how many calls we get. I'm not saying we didn't get them. Dog it. She figured out a trick to the system. Loophole. Block Kim's number. I'm sorry. No. So we'll double check it and make sure. So, and look, any time we do it, again, this is going to get us to a point in time. I know people have been putting in the gas generators on a regular basis. I know we're going to have another need, but well, at a certain point, a permit would even required. Right? If you go far enough back, I think some situations where somebody had gas for their house because maybe they had a gas stove and a gas hot water heater, and then they added tankless or they added a generator, and in some situations they got a permit, some situations they didn't. Again, half the issues we had Francine, we were able to address by bigger line, bigger meter, bigger regulator, you know. Yes, sir. Plus, our planning and zoning guy.
Thanks. Actually, just today, Ernest sent over a couple of dispatchers, and they're going to be set up in the permit office, in the permit lobby with the rest of the permit clerks and the utility payments group, because what we found is that sometimes the disconnect and the slowdowns are because the customer doesn't realize that they need to set up an account, go pay a deposit. So by having someone who is dedicated, all that person is going to do will be to process any gas trade or gas generator permits that either come in online or come in, foot traffic through the door. And of course, when they're not doing that, they can do their other utility department dispatching duties. But that person will be able to process those permits much faster. And if there's that need for a deposit or whatever, they can just tell them, look, go right around the corner right there to those people on the other side of the counter, and that's who you get to. So hopefully we'll speed those up.
And I really want to give credit to those guys for figuring that out, because it was an issue that was brought up. How do we make this better? They helped figure out a way for that to run smoother. So, all right. Any other questions? Moving on. Kim's up to her 2 questions, working on 15. No. So I talked a little bit about insurance a while ago. We're battling 2 insurance crises in one, I feel like. One's homeowners, the other's flood. A lot of the stuff that I feel like the parish can help with or make a difference in more is on the flood side. And in fact, recently, so Mark Cooper is the only person from the state of Louisiana that serves on Trump's FEMA task force. We had a parish president's meeting. We talked to him about all the issues we deal with. I brought Earl, I brought Candace, and we talked about every problem we had with FEMA, the fact we're still waiting on money, how complicated some of the processes are, Risk Ready 2.0 issues, the whole gambit of things. And so he's able to take that information to the task force, and I think that's going to make a difference. I think that's probably the low-hanging fruit of the opportunity. Then I look at the fact that, after Francine hit, Tim Tipple came down here. We went and walked the levees in Montague to see where the water came right up to the top of the levee. And then we ended up with a study that showed with the $1 to $1.2 billion that we've spent on levees in Terrebonne Parish, of which we taxed ourselves for, just for Francine alone, saved FEMA $1.7 billion. So I think that's important to, again, get that credit, to know that he saw that not many roofs were damaged. We had not many poles were down. We still had 1,700 properties that had damage, and of those 1,700, 17 were completely destroyed. So some people had their IDA experience for Francine. I was just shy of a Category 2 storm. But by him seeing it, feeling, and touching it, he's working on getting reinsurers down here to see, feel, and touch the same thing. And I think they're hopefully coming next month to do that. But the reinsurance market is where you end up with a lot of your issues with the rates going up. You look at the state legislature has went through 26 bills last year based on insurance companies saying, if you do this, we're going to lower rates. They do those bills, nothing gets lowered. So they had to go back and do some reform again this year. So waiting to see how that kind of shakes out from a homeowner's perspective. And then we're working with FEMA on giving them data. They have the latest data they have is 2018. They're required to do a review every 10 years. like I've been explaining to everybody I could talk to at FEMA and our Congress people, is that we've done 3 times the work in the last 5 years over the previous 10. FEMA should be checking it every 5. We shouldn't be having to pay FEMA money to give them data for them to take 2 years to go through it to understand that we have floodgates and pumps and just levees and everything that should make a difference related to flood insurance now. And that's some of the other conversation that we had with Mark Cooper about the fact that between Lafourche, Terrebonne, and St. Charles Parish, you're probably looking at those 3 parishes spending between $4 and $5 million with consultants to give FEMA data so they could recognize the stuff that we built, right? That's just crazy because you can't put that money in roads and bridges and everything else. So, and then we were part of a lawsuit with FEMA. That's kind of been stationary for at least 6 months to a year with them trying to, get risk rating, the data behind risk rating 2.0. Again, all that's got to change. I think that's why they're doing the task force. They're talking about flipping it upside down. But that's some of the things that we're doing, again, from a flood insurance and a regular insurance perspective to make a difference. And when you look at the fact that in the big, beautiful bill, as much things that are controversial in there, one of the things that was in there was they raised the cap of funds that the Gulf states get for oil revenue sharing from $500 million to $650 million. Now, we only get 37.5% of oil revenue sharing. All the interior states get 50%. So, for example, New Mexico got a check for $2.9 billion. Last year, Louisiana collected $150 million. Of that, $20 million went to the parishes. Now, we're probably 8th or 9th in amount of oil produced, but we're in I think we're 30th or 20th in the revenue collected off of the oil that's produced. And so the first step was either one of 2 things happened. We go from 37.5 to 50, or we go from 500 million to 650, 750, a billion or whatever it is. This first step to get from 500 to 650 is a difference. It does help. And again, going back to the conversation, for the money that we spent for our levies, save FEMA $1.7 billion is what drove this thing being in that bill. We should start getting some of that funding of April 26th, of which we'll have the opportunity to bond and work on coastal restoration projects, not roads and bridges or community centers like Ms. Kim want. I knew it was coming. But, I think it's important to understand that, that's the level of work that's being done, because every dollar we can put into the coast saves money for the government, right? And protects our livelihoods. And, we got a bunch of projects going on right now. Gordy came with CPRA today. Right now we're over $500 million worth of projects in Terrebonne Parish alone when you look at the work that's being done. And I know, everybody says, for $1.2 billion, we should have a lot. And as you travel from west to east, starting at Miners Canal to Intercoastal, you have 0 foot, 3 foot, 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, comes back around to 15 foot on the east side of the parish. The debris line for Ida was at 18 foot in Lafourche, right? Francine pushed up against Montague at 10 foot, but I also believe that 18 foot in Lafourche is like 15 foot here, because in Lafourche, when it goes over their levees, it's in their backyards. With us, if it goes over our 15-foot levees, there's a parish levee and a lot of things to get to that point and more area to cover. But at the end of the day, again, if Francine hits 30 miles west or is a category 2 higher, Dularge is probably a bowl of water, because that area was subsiding. The levee district trucked 6,700 trucks of dirt to that levee before that storm hit to get it raised up at least back to that 8-foot level, right? So it's all about the way it comes in, how strong it is, the surge that it pushes. At one point when Francine was moving, I was like, keep coming east, right? Get us on the west side of that storm, minimizes some of that storm surge. And in our weakest area, which is the east side of the parish, we're at 15 foot. I say all that to say we're probably halfway there right now, because again, we have some areas that are 0, 3. They're talking about building locks in the intercoastal that really keep us sealed. One's going to be on the west side of Terrebonne, and the other one's going to be on the other side of the Lafourche. So we have a lot of work to get done. And when you look at the lock system at the HNC, that right there, once that's finished, is going to be the difference between waters and yards and no water at all. For Rita, 11,000 homes flooded. For Ida, for Barry, it was 3. For Ida, it was 0 related to surge. Now, we had some drainage issues where, and that's something I want to make sure everybody hears, and I've been saying it every time I talk about a storm. A non-drainage issue can turn into a drainage issue real quick if you got debris in your yard. And that's what happened on the north side of the parish with Ida, is that things that, some of the ditches that maybe were clean, tree falls, things happen during a storm. Next thing you know, that ends up in the drain gets clogged, you end up with some flooding. But from a surge perspective, the work that's been done, 0 homes flooded with our last storm. And again, for some situations, like for the Houma Navigational Canal, the Bubba Dove, we can't close that unless we have a named storm and a potential 2-foot storm surge. That combination. Well, by the time that happens, a storm's maybe been pushing north for days or even a day, and water's already in the system. But we can't close it because we're not allowed to. So in that situation, you're going to end up with water in some people's yards. But it's better to have water in your yard than in your house. And it's going to get better. But that lock project alone is probably 2 years out. So a lot of money spent, a lot of things that have been done. We're seeing the results of that, but there is still more work to do. And again, our goal is to get at least everything up to a 15-foot across the board. The overall plans in some areas, it's going to have to go to 20, if not 25. And as everything subsides, you know, you put 2 foot on to get a foot back, right? And that's what you have to, that's what you do, what you deal with the levees. Now, with our levees, I think it's important to know that they are built to core standards, but we are building them different. And I've seen numbers where for a project that would cost us $26 million, I say us, the levee district, everybody else, a project that costs us $26 million to build costs the Corps of Engineers $130 million to build. But the way they do it is they build the base for what it's going to be down the road. So if that base is the size of a football field, they're going to build that base to 2 foot versus building a levee to 8, like we've been doing. And in turn, for a long time, we wanted the Corps to get involved. They're right now working on Reach A and Do Large. But if they would have been involved, it'd have been way more expensive. So in a way, I'm actually, in some situations, glad that we kind of did it ourselves because we were able to do it a lot less. And we probably wouldn't have where we are now. We're anywhere from 5 to 10 years ahead of anybody or anybody else around the state. People are coming to us to see what we've done with levees everywhere along the coast of the state. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands all that. Yeah, if you go to, I think on our website you could see it, but Morganza to the Gulf has a website, Morganza Action Coalition, and you could see they call them reaches. So it goes Reach A all the way around to, I think we're somewhere around each Reach M or L or whatever. And it has a pretty good idea. But again, every day, you know, something might have been 8 foot 6 months ago. Now it's at 10. And again, you got to build it to 11 to let it get it to 10, and you come back and build again. But between us, the Levee District, Morganza Action Coalition, sites, I think there's some information. In fact, I think Mark must have walked out. Of course, he walks out, then I ask for him. Y'all make sure y'all tell him that, by the way. He can help me better direct you to where it is. I can tell you one of the things that we did, and I got to give Mark credit on doing this, is we created a Terrebonne Parish Coastal Master Plan and identified the projects that we feel are important to get done, how much they cost, and everything else. And anytime somebody comes to us and says, "You need any money for coastal stuff?" we go, "Here's number 2. Here's number 4." Here, you know, like in priority of what things that we need, and it pretty much aligns with what you see with the CPRA master plan. But eventually, I'm getting us to get a page built on the website that shows you all the projects and if they're marsh creation or whatever it may be when it comes to the type of project that we want to get done and the projects that we are getting done. So, all right. Next thing, accountability. So I'm real proud of this and our teams. 191 properties demolished in 2024 alone. Now, the cool part I like about that number is the amount of properties that residents are handling is on an uptick. So it's not only the parish demolishing, but it's also residents themselves. And so as you can see, we have 425 properties in the current process. I remember when that sat at 500 and wouldn't go down, we were getting more in than we were processing. The council used to do 25 a quarter, now they're doing 50. We've also brought in South Central Planning to help us process more because we kind of reached our processing limit with our department. And so right now it's really a situation of having the money and getting the money to fund the next rounds of demolitions. We had some American Restore money that we've been using for a while. We're working on getting some other funding right now. But again, that's original over 1 million. But again, to go through 191 properties and have those properties be demolished in some way, shape, or form in 2024 alone, I got to give props to our team for the great job that is. And we're going to fix blight, right? We addressed, when you look at the bottom part, that nuisance and abatement, that second item that says stacking and more accountability. We actually passed an ordinance with the council. If you have more than one property that has issues, or if you have one property that has issues, it gets more expensive for you to keep it in a blight manner, right? So we sped up the process because we used to have to send letters and wait for a kickback. Now we're able to serve people. So we did some changes to that ordinance to help make that process run smoother and help us to be able to react faster. Also, along with panhandling and vagrancy, which was unconstitutional, we adopted an anti-camping ordinance. The example I like to give is the banana box condos at the bottom of the twin spans. Prior to that ordinance, if somebody set up shop in a building and the owner didn't want to press trespassing charges, there was nothing we can do. Now we have this anti-camping ordinance that we can use. And again, what we've seen is as we continue to identify blight and start putting things in the condemnation process, you start seeing some other things get rebuilt and redone. You've seen a little bit of that downtown already. And then from a recreation accountability, we worked to pass something that's more of, there used to be this advisory board. Now it's the chairs of each recreation district. They have to attend. If they don't attend, they remove this chair. But it's to make sure the rec districts are working together and that they can help utilize resources and share input and share feedback. For example, we have three rec facilities that have like a elderly meal. We have 11 districts. Why don't we have all 11 districts that have something along those lines? I'm not saying it's got to be perfect, but what can we do to make sure that the rec districts that are doing everything right and getting everything right help the ones that aren't? And so I'm excited about that. We passed the borrow pit ordinance that we threw in a pond. Also, it was amazing to me to see how many ponds that would get built and we get phone calls and there was nothing we can do. And so now if it's a certain size pond, we want to be involved in that process. No different than what I talked about with permits for homes, because we had some people build ponds that next thing you know were flooding out neighborhoods, right? And then the issues that we dealt with borrow pits and how much of again, just going to make sure it's not too close to our house and those kind of things. So again, stuff that's passed that, I'm not about government regulation, but I'm about protecting residents' safety and making sure that things are done to the level that we've had specific examples that cause or could cause potential harm to residents. Those are things that I feel like as a government we have to address. You had a hand up?
I have a question under the nuisance and abatement. So, for example, you said that sometimes you actually serve the people. Let's say there's a scenario where there's a house in my neighborhood and the person who lived in the house may have passed away and their family lives in another state. But the mailing address for said property on 123 ABC Street is still 123 ABC Street, and we can't get in touch with the family because they live in another state. What do you do in a situation like that?
You want to address that one, Chris? I'd love for you to kind of walk through that. I could throw it out, but Chris is going to hit it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a reality often. And so the state law, and as does the parish ordinance, provide for us an opportunity to publish the notice in the paper. So the official journal of Terrebonne Parish is the Courier. So we publish that in the paper, and once that's done, then the notice requirement is met. And we will also appoint an ad hoc attorney to handle that case through the process and represent the family. But that's how it's handled. It might be 30 days for the condemnation and 60 days for a sunken vessel. No, all of that's leading up to the condemnation hearing, and then we have the ad hoc attorney appear at the condemnation hearing on behalf of the family. Well, at that point, like anything else, it just condemn with 30 days. I mean, there's usually a 30-day period after the hearing before the parish would send out a contractor to demolish. And, we usually will back charge the owner for that. But if the owner is nowhere to be found, then unfortunately, sometimes that's a cost that the parish has to absorb. Yeah, and then as time goes on, it becomes adjudicated, like Jason was talking about earlier. So.
And look, it takes time. One of the things we're working on is the ability for you to go to a website and see if this has got a permit or this has a nuisance abatement claim against it. Really, we've really again sped up the process where we could do known aliases or family members to try to get in touch with somebody. We want to do our job to make sure we communicate. At the end of the day, the last thing we want to do is demolish it as a parish, because then it runs the DNR. So in situations where we've had more residents tear it down, and we've dealt with a couple of properties where just extreme circumstances, they got some money, they had to use this money to do this, they didn't have the money to do that. We're getting Red Cross involved, we're getting Housing and Human Services involved. We got different groups that we're able to, kind of like an unmet needs opportunity with some nonprofits or NGOs, to do everything we can to make sure that family is helped if there's an opportunity. Again, if we end up where nobody knows, can't get in touch with anybody, ad hoc attorney, the building gets torn down. So, and I don't know if I have derelict vessels on this slideshow. Leilani, you remember if I had derelict vessels on this slideshow? I think it's next. Yeah, it is. It's next. Okay, it's coming up. Okay. And look, revised movable food vendors, right? For those that don't know, I would love to have food trucks downtown. We're not quite there yet, but through that process, we set up a process to manage food trucks better. And so through conversations with our planning and zoning group, what's working, what's not working, how do we better manage this? We changed the way we manage food trucks at a parish level. And then now that we've done that, there are some opportunities that if we end up putting food trucks downtown, besides the fact that we're going to have them for some live after fives in both August and September, so you'll get to experience food trucks downtown as part of some live after five events. And you can get a public permit or you could do it for Mardi Gras. But as an overall thing, I'm a foot traffic guy, and there's studies that show for every dollar you spend related to foot traffic, you get a tenfold investment. But now we're actually managing food trucks better than we used to. That allows us to have more control over making sure that things are adhered to. For example, a food truck can't stay anywhere. It's got to leave every day. You have to have a commissary. I mean, there's a lot of rules that go with it, but the opportunity for us to better manage that is where we're starting. And then hopefully at the end of the day, if the community wants it, we'll have food trucks downtown. I know I'm one that votes for it, by the way. Any questions on this before I move forward? And again, I know I'm almost done. I know it's a little bit, but this is what we've done in a year and 7 months, and we're just getting started. So I like to brag on our team because I could not have done this without our team. I'm just there to make sure I don't get in the way or, prove stuff that maybe they can't afford to spend, or Kim, I handle Kim for them. I do that a lot. All right, next slide. Quality of life. So again, we renamed TPR to Quality of Life for those that may or may not know. In that department, we have athletics and leisure, which is your traditional football, baseball, basketball. We have community enrichment, which was downtown Main Street. And basically, I wanted the care and love that Ann gave to downtown Main Street to be given to the entire parish. So we kind of evolved that out of just Main Street to the entire parish. And we have venues and destinations. You used to have to call one person for the Civic Center and a different person for the municipal auditorium. Now all that's together, and the sports park is part of it. And so if you need a facility for something, you call one group and they tell you, here's all the facilities we have available and the day that you're looking for. And we're working with the rec districts to make sure things get scheduled and facilities get used. And then so in that process, we took over all these parks that you see here. Of course, with the Air Base Softball Complex being pushed to what I would hope would be the Bayou Country Sports Park or the east side. One of the things I'm asking Chris to work on for me is doing a bike trail similar to Bogachita. If you ever hadn't checked out the Bogachita bike trail, it's something real cool. I'd love to have that by the east side, at the east side softball complex. We have a master plan. We're going through and trying to help check things off of things that are done. We have that splash pad out there now. But again, bringing in facilities, plus we still got some other projects that we're working on at the Bayou Country Sports Park, which is the next thing is going to be a dog park. And we're looking at something with some tennis courts. So again, just trying to make sure across the parish that you can access quality of life no matter where you live, no matter how old you are. One of the other cool projects is we're taking the tennis courts on Williams, which is behind the American Legion, and we're going to be converting those to some pickleball courts using funds from FEMA because they stored a bunch of stuff on there and broke it. So we're going to get it redone, and we're going to make it a pickleball court. And I was hoping to get the veterans to manage it, and they can make money with concessions and stuff. So just doing some cool things to help out everybody. Yes, Kim. Yes, no. I appreciate Kim being here, by the way, for the record. I appreciate Danny a little bit more because he's quiet back there, but I appreciate Kim too. Mr. Lerat? Mr. Lerat? I have a question on Rio Vista Park. Yeah. Well, she wants to ask you in front of everybody, and she wants to hear your beautiful voice.
Right. So, yes, it was. So, a little backstory. My position at the parish, before I was working with Jason in administration, I was on Rec 11 board. And the reason why I joined that board is because my son scraped his knee 3 different times on the same piece of rusty metal. And I joined Rec 11 because of that. I quickly realized that this was a problem with maintenance that was pervasive across the whole, not just Rec 11, but just in general. So we set up a policy with this administration to get rid of dangerous playground equipment, return spaces to green spaces, get it to a nice fresh start, and rebuild with sustainability in mind. So we've had our risk management department with Mr. Dana go through everything, identify risk hazards. We've eliminated them, and we're currently working to build those back right now. Shady Oaks Park, for instance, we've developed a partnership with TGMC and Oshner to build an agility park, and we're going to be looking to do the same type of thing for all these other parks to create some ownership and some accountability in our communities. Beyond that, we also have some program income money identified from Gustav to identify, to help remediate some of these parks and replace some of that broken equipment. We're looking to get that money, I think, towards the end of the year. So that's the long-winded answer. But there's a plan in place. It starts with removing hazards, getting things back to green space, and then rebuilding in a way that will have something that's going to last. So.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any other questions on parks and quality of life before we move forward? We're close to the end, I promise. Unless Kim's got some more questions. No. Website, excited. I talked about that. Website redone. If I didn't talk about it, I thought I talked about it. But easier to manage, use, find anything you need, pay bills. Just having it easy to use. As we go through, we upgraded our phone system, our mail system, our website. We're in the process of upgrading our work order systems and our accounting systems. And then once that's done, to really have the conversation of the Terrebonne Parish checkbook, where you can see everything, what's budgeted, what's collected, what's spent across the board. We had to get our website redesigned to allow that possibility in the future once we upgrade our accounting software. But council district maps, job openings, you name it, it's there. So go check that out, tpcg.org. All right, next item, bayous. So we have 3 bayous that we're working in right now. When we got here, we found we had about $8 to $9 million for Bayou Terrebonne since about 2012, but it was to dredge Bayou Terrebonne to -6. That's not enough money to do that to the parish line. So we did a clear and snag project from West Side Boulevard to Lafayette, or Lafayette to West Side Boulevard. We figured out how much that was a mile. We said we want to basically take that concept and apply it all the way to the parish line. So we've had to go through a permit process with DENR, Department of Energy and Natural Resources, and the Corps of Engineers to take that funding and make sure we can go all the way to the parish line. At the same time, we're working on now Francine vegetation and debris removal projects with debris that was identified after Francine. And then we're working with CDBGR projects with Activate the Bayou to do Bayou Grand Caillou and Bayou Dularge. So you're looking at basically 3 bayous in about a 3-year time period that are going to be cleaned up, maintained. We're looking to try to get more fresh water into Bayou Terrebonne through a couple different opportunities near the parish line and just get that waterway flowing. Again, all those areas are major drainage arteries. We got to make sure they're healthy, clean. If you go by Grand Caillou, like I talked about, you can see some work that we've already started there. Derelict vessel removal. We identified 232 derelict vessels within 4 waterways. That's not everywhere in the parish. That's just 4 waterways. What's a derelict vessel? See the vessels that are sunk in the bayou, whether it be a shrimp boat or whatever it may be. So, what's that? Can't vote, yes, all the above. So we have $1 million through Ida Insurance that we're going to apply. And then we actually received the grant for another $1 million, and we're applying for some other grants. The first stab we're going to take at it is we identified 30 vessels in Bayou Grand Caille, trying to get the best bang for our buck and the best in one area. We were encouraged to identify 30 vessels, and now the owners have dealt with all but 14. So the 30 vessels we originally thought we were going to pick up, 16 of those have been addressed, and we only have 14 to deal with. And so we're going to go through, we're getting all those projects are going to bid. We're going to get some vessels out of the waterways. If you think it looks bad from the road, you should see it from in the bayou in some areas. And so that's something we're doing to clean derelict vessels along with the houses we talked about earlier, right? So imagine, 500 there, 232 here. These are things that we are using funding. But again, we're going after grants, in this case, specifically for picking up vessels. And that's because every time I got around somebody with FEMA or the state, I kept talking about how many derelict vessels we had, where people were calling me going, have you heard about this grant? Have you tried that grant? You should go after this grant. And here we are looking at using $2 million to clean up vessels. We got to kind of figure out how it's going to shake out, depending on what it takes to get them removed. But again, we've identified 232 just in 4 waterways. Yes, sir. Look at that. Pre-con meeting, we're about to start picking some vessels up out of the waterways. And then we had a revival campaign. I'm going to give shout out to Noah on this one. Just bringing awareness of the fact that don't pollute our waterways, litter in general. There are areas we'll clean up and come back the next week and they got just as much trash as they had the week before. So as a community, we have to do better. I am working on reinstituting community service, especially if you throw trash out, that you'll be helping us pick that up. You can run it. If you give me a van, I can make it happen now. That's what I'm trying to find right now. I've worked with the judges and the DA. They're all on board. We're working on finding a van to help move people around. But again, at the end of the day, one of our biggest problems is that we trash our own area. And look, for Mardi Gras, we spend 2 weeks doing that basic thing. So we put up some fencing along by Terrebonne. We're trying to stop the stuff from getting in the bayou. We put some things, we covered drains. We put some nets on some culverts. We put some berms at different bridges. And I think we picked up 33 bags of trash out of Bayou Terrebonne during the Mardi Gras time period that we stopped from getting into the intercoastal. So those are things that we're doing to mitigate some of the trash and litter issues that we're dealing with. And we had, little videos and letting people know, clean up. You've seen probably more garbage cans on the side of the parade route than ever before. You'd be surprised how many people still don't use them, but I feel like we are getting better. Right. We do find a couple of those colored cans behind people's houses and we go collect them, by the way, but that's why the color they are. Any questions on bayous or anything? I promise we're almost there. Promise. Roads and bridges. Man, y'all knew it was coming, right? The bridges fixed. Hey, look, if y'all don't think we take ownership of some of this stuff, that's a great example right there, right? So I like to share just from a north and south perspective. I got some things listed there. DOTD is spending between $20 and $25 million in the next year and a half, 2 years on projects. And as much as it's an inconvenience with the bridge issues we're dealing with, I just can't tell them to stop. Like, it's a little bit of a pain. It's frustrating. Traffic's maybe going to be bad for a little while. In 6 months, everybody will have something else to complain about, right, at the end of the day. And that's okay. So, we got a lot of stuff going on between Main Street Park, Grand Caille. We actually put on Facebook today, we started some striping projects. Hollywood, St. Charles, Van and 311, that area. A lot of this stuff is just trying to find the funding to get it done and working hard to make that happen. And I get to give credit to our teams for, help identifying. Martin Luther King project, I've been talking about that since before I got in office. And the fact that they were going to put a median has been in and out of that project. And I told them, I said, if I find out it's out, we're going to have a problem. And they're guaranteeing it's going to be in. They're saying that project's supposed to let in 26. Keep in mind, we're trying to transition from a 23% completion of projects that get bid to higher than that. I think we have the opportunity with Glenn Leday, who is the secretary of DOTD, who's a Thibodeau guy. Now we have Archie Chasson's going to work for the Louisiana Road Construction new department. Those two guys, I think we have the greatest opportunity. It's never going to happen fast enough for a while, and there's going to be issues along the way. We deal with it every day. They opened up the Boudreaux Canal Bridge at 4 o'clock to traffic and then closed it at 4:15 for a boat. It happens. It's just can't, it just, no matter what you do, sometimes you just can, but it's open, right, Head Bridge. Right. But we've been sharing this information on our Facebook page. As things are announced, we roll it out. We try to keep that updated as things change. I've been doing the bridge videos to kind of help with some of this also. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you like I tell my beautiful wife. People don't care. They don't. And look, I don't blame them either. It's frustrating. A story I tell is my father-in-law broke his axle on his boat trailer in front of the air base where that big bumpy area was. And so if you can imagine, it's me going, guys, my father-in-law broke his axle. Like, what can we do? And then they would tell us they were fixing it. Come to find out it was a patch, not an overlay. The overlay's still coming. Again, we just try to educate. And as a whole, and I even said this in one of my videos, that I don't think I've seen council members, DOTD, our representatives in Baton Rouge, even our representatives at the federal level. I was in conversations with Higgins' group on a regular basis about to try to find some funding to buy some cables for the Dakeville Bridge, right? Because it's crazy about that bridge is it's a state bridge that's federally funded. If you look at all the bridges we had issues with, some were new construction. One was damaged from a storm. 2 were damaged from being hit. Another one was a malfunction. Another one was a failure. Like, it was just different things, age, and they're all funded by different mechanisms. And so I think it's moving forward. I've never seen anybody work collaboratively on something like this since Ida. So I can tell you that our representatives are stepping over each other to try to make sure everybody has updates and the latest information. And I guarantee you, DOTD is talking to somebody from Terrebonne Parish. I would put every hour on the hour, if not every 4 hours. But we've already seen some things change, and a good example of that is Dularge Bridge. The motors and the cylinders were both worked on by Terrebonne Parish companies, right? And that's the things that I've seen change that before, we had enough trouble getting updates. And look, they'll talk to Kim, tell her something. They talk to me and tell me something. Then they talk to somebody else. And I had a call with them Friday at 4. We talked for 15 minutes, mostly about the Boudreaux Canal and Dularge Bridge, to get off the phone. And I got an email at 4:30 that they were opening the Dularge for vehicle traffic. Didn't talk about that in my call, though. So, but again, that's opportunities for me to share with the secretary. This is the stuff that needs to be approved upon. But I can tell you, through the projects, I've learned that DOT has very little control over their contractors. And it's not to their detriment. It's sometimes how the contracts are written. So if I went over for the Monday that the Burke Bridge opened, which I've seen a trend, the last 2 bridges that opened, actually 3 now that opened, were in the rain, by the way. So if it's going to open, it's going to open during the rain. When at Boudreaux Canal, I'm sure it was raining, right? But the electricians had left, and I said, boy, man, like I'd have brought them lunch. And they said, no, if we ask electricians to stay, that's a change order. If we try to get this not done today, so a lot of the things that we've done with the parish, for example, is we redid our vegetation contract to get more bang for our buck, to use our work order system. We ended up getting a new contractor, and you got some areas that was supposed to be cut. They call them in cycles, 3 to 4 cycles a year, that may have been touched once. So this first cycle is taking a lot longer because areas that are only sprayed had to be cut and then get sprayed again, right? So this first cycle is taking a little bit longer, but they're on the south side of the parish. They only started in March. They're going to come back around, and you're going to see an improvement when it comes to vegetation. We got areas that are in right-of-ways in some of these subdivisions that hadn't been touched in decades that we were able to get in there and clean up, and you're going to see that continue to improve. Right. They used to go out a year. Now it's only 6 months. And keep in mind that project that was a year, only 23% of those projects would get done. So that's why we try to do it. We've tried to input ourselves into that process that says This is the information that we're hearing. When something was, think about this. So the Martin Luther King project we talked about being let in April of 26, there was a 23% of that chance of that project even going to construction, right? And sometimes the bid was too high, various reasons, right? With two projects, Martin Luther King did a study, and the company that did the study, it was horrible. And then we understood from the Boudreaux Canal perspective, the study that was done on that bridge a year ago never got turned in. So again, there's so many different things going on to put us where we are. But I believe moving forward, we're in a much better place. Everybody's working together. And I've been told that basically the governor said, give everyone what they need. And that's what, one thing. And I declared an emergency. And one of the things that did, if not anything else, is sped up the process for the repair of the Dulac Pontoon Bridge. So. Put the bid. Yeah, put the bid. So that doesn't mean it's going to get started. It means they're going to put it to bid. Now, if they have it estimated as a $3 million project and the bid comes in at $4 million, that could be part of the reason why only 23% of the projects got done, right? So, and so look, a lot of projects on here, both in the north side and parish-wide, the tunnel. A couple things I'll share. One, the same people that cut the grass for DOTD are the same people that fix the roads from a pothole perspective. Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? If they're halfway through a cycle of grass and their cycle takes 8 weeks and then they got a major issue, they're stopping what they're doing, they're going to work on that. I've directed our team, you see a pothole, you think it needs to be fixed, you go fix it. Call DOTD. If you think it can wait till the end of the day, if you think it can wait till the end of the week, I'm going to let you use your judgment. If you think it's unsafe, fix it. We'll figure it out on the back end. But we have a CEA with DOTD. We're working on getting some grass cut, and I think it's probably the next slide, but I'll talk about it now. We just took over Martin Luther King grass cutting. DOTD is going to pay us to do that. We have 5 CEAs right now that we're cutting grass for the state. The more grass we cut for the state, the more they can fix the potholes, right? But at the same time, we've also had a conversation that says if the parish decides to cut all the grass in the parish that belongs to the state, it would cost $1.6 million. So if I can find $1.6 million, we're going to cut all the grass, What's interesting is we have 2 different grass cutting groups. We have our roadsides and rough cuts and finish cuts, and then we have our drainage cuts. All our drainage stuff is done externally. All our roadside rough cut stuff is done internally. So a lot of times you'll see when you go between Houma and Thibodaux, if you get to the bridges, you're going to see the corners. I hate to say it because it sounds like we're cutting corners, but we are cutting corners. Where people can see a little bit better. That's stuff that our parish tractors are doing as they're passing between jobs. They're not necessarily cutting the state road, which sometimes gets to that tall, but we're at least kind of cutting some areas that make it easier for our residents to see and pull out. And those are the kind of things that we're doing to work with DOTD and in situations where they can't get to something that we can help offset that. So, but you can see a lot of projects going on. Boudreaux Canal Bridge, they said that, that's going to be started in 26. We're working with them to fix Country Drive because the detour that wasn't officially a detour messed up that road. So we're trying to help the state get us to fix that. I was talking about tunnel maintenance. So the group that does tunnel maintenance, which brings a whole nother question into Bayou Blue Pontoon versus Dularge versus tunnel. I was threatening, it's a good word to use, to put lights in the tunnel ourselves because it was just too dark. And the next thing you know, DOT went out, and I think at the first day it was 50% brighter. Then the Dularge Bridge had an issue. They pulled that crew to go work on Dularge. When Dularge is done, they're telling us they're going to get back on it. We had committed DOTD to cleaning the tunnel once a quarter. The last time they did it is November of 24, so that's not happening like it should. But it will, and that's where as soon as Dularge is done, we have the expectation, again, go clean it, go fix the lights, because if you don't, we will, because there's just certain things that I feel like we can't wait for. And the lights on the tunnel is one of them. I know, I've seen that. So Dularge is right there, right? I'm waiting on a text message to get an update. But, and again, we're at 2.5 bridges open because Dularge is open during rush hour. Bayou Blue Pontoon, which Kim and I just learned is the same crew. They're still telling us August 30th. Dagville Bridge, September, October. Dulac Pontoon, and I'll talk about that one in a little bit, is going to be probably end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter. And that, when you look at that, and I'll go to the next slide, on our parish projects, of all the bridges that have issues, our bridges don't have inspection wear issues. Our one bridge got hit by a barge, the other bridge got hit by a storm, right? That's the issues that you're dealing with from a parish perspective. When people have the conversation going, are we inspecting our bridges? Yes, Terrebonne Parish bridges are in working order. The Dulac Pontoon Bridge was hit $1 million worth of damage to start. That number could go up. A couple other projects I talked about, the grass cutting. We took over Martin Luther King. I talked about the striping projects that we have going on. Again, we're just getting started. The utilities, gas line upgrades that I talked about. Those are all things that are going on in the parish, by the parish. Any questions on that? All right. That's it. That's the last slide. I'd love to get y'all to scan the QR code and do a survey. Nobody ever does it. I think Kim's going to do it. No. But we'd love our feedback. Again, we hope you found it informative. If anybody's got any other questions, we're not leaving until all questions are answered, or I collect the data and we get back to you and answer your question for something that we may not be able to answer today. Right. That's a good idea.
Keeping an eye on what's going on in the past.
Right.
You got it right there. It's particular for, oh, we got somebody applying for a permit for a driveway, or somebody for, I know it's just being nosy, but hey, you gotta get informed, you gotta get the easiest way. It's the easiest way for the public to know what's going on in the past.
Well, with our
On the survey says that. What information would you like to see discussed at the next town hall?
There you go. So, like I talked about earlier, we have our MGO work order system that we work through with permits. We're working on some things to have things where they're mapped. My goal would be you pull out a phone, you press on the map, and you report something or get an update on something. So I think that's a combination of that along with some other things. But we could write down the note of what you're asking for. And, right.
We used to pay for it, and we did it every month. And
Killing me.
And it was a lot easier, you can sit down and read all what was going on in the parish as a
Right.
whole, and keep up with things.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make that note and check out, see what we can do for that. Yes, ma'am. Which street is that, if you want me to? Lewis Drive. Looking to see. Lewis Drive, sound familiar? So, do me a favor, see that guy looks like he got no neck back there? Yeah, that guy. Bring that to Scotty, and he'll, right. Okay. Right. Killing me. Right. Yeah, share that with Scotty. And look, we're the first pass we made at doing some things is get some stuff striped. We're working on trying to get, again, roads and bridges. It's one of the few areas that we only pay, I can't remember if it's a millage or a sales tax only. It's not both. Probably one of the most poorly funded. It's the big thick neck guy back there. It's like a pit bull.
I'm writing it down right now.
So,
I'm gonna talk to you after I'm starting to put it in right now.
So, oh, come on. No, you don't worry, Scotty, don't worry about her. Yeah. Look, and sometimes people submit stuff online or you call us, right? That's the two ways to let us know. We, and some of this stuff's on a list. It can be done. Okay. Well, we'll get it reported. We're only fixing 10 potholes a night right now so I'll give you 10. No, I'm just joking. Yeah. If Kim quit trying to submit stuff, no. Yeah, and look, we got the website there to submit stuff, and what it helps us do is track it. I hear you. No. What I'm hoping, I love it. I'm hoping that he goes, yeah, I'm familiar with it. That's the one I've been telling you about. That's the one we need to get some funding for. But we're definitely working to make sure that's safe. I hear you. All right. I love somebody who brings pictures of stuff. You can ask, I tell people all the time, send me a picture, send me an address. I get a hard time because people say I don't have an open door policy, but I go, like, I'm booking 3 weeks out. You'll send it to me. It's hard for me to understand we wouldn't have it fixed by the time we'd even meet. Because I'm going to turn around and give it to Scotty anyway. Be like, here, go check that out, So, no problem. Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? I was going to say this real quick. If you don't want to say it in public, I'm going to hang out for a little while after. So, yes, ma'am. So I can tell you through both subdivision and property construction, things have to be submitted for our engineering group and all to look at plans. More from a residential side than a business, the neighborhood versus a business. We just upgraded an ordinance this past, I think it got approved this past council meeting, where there was something in an area, we had to move it. It helps us better understand it and manage it from a permits perspective. So for commercial buildings, there's some stuff that maybe hadn't been happening, but there is a conversation that says a plan was submitted, the water's got to flow a certain direction to not impact that. Same thing with neighborhoods and everything. If we could get that from you, write it, if you could give one of our team members, you got a piece of paper, give us the address so I could give it to Chris. He's not here anymore. Yeah. If it's a subdivision, they had to get with us and we had to lay out, like some subdivisions will get built and they might want to have separate sewage and not tie into city sewage, right? For them to tie into city sewage, there's certain codes and requirements they have to meet. But from a neighborhood perspective, just to have a neighborhood built, drainage things are discussed, how everything's sloped and managed. So from a perspective of should it have an impact on an area, that's why when you see the big box stores build buildings, there's big lakes behind them, because they have to have a retention pond to hold the water, because it's a conversation about how much it's offset with concrete coverage versus what you used to have a grass before. And so in this situation, that should all be addressed, but we're going to definitely double check and make sure. Right. Right. I know what you're talking about now. I saw it was raised.
The first house off of his track is like 1.5 to 2 foot below the house. Yeah,
Right.
below his grade.
So the way that's built,
That's gonna be draining off.
well, but the way he's supposed to build it, and this is where we come back and inspect after, is that that water is not supposed to run to that house. It's got to run, most of the times they either run to the road or run to the back of the property. Right. And I'll give you a good example with one of the Imperial Terrace property that's being built. Part of that conversation is, even from a sewage perspective, part of their responsibility is to upgrade sewage to support the additional sewage that's going to work within a current system. So whether it's sewage or drainage or whatever it is, electricity, all those things are engineered, and we have to get, in fact, I've signed them since I've been in office. That's got to be an engineer stamped plan that we approve and sign off on to make sure before they can even build the first driveway, the first piece of panel, whatever. Right. Right.
But there's also a nursing home right in there, or some kind of elderly or assisted living.
Right.
You know, and I'm concerned about those people too, because it is really hard.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, we could give you information that way. We could tell you what we found. I'd be hard pressed to see, because the thing, he's not here, that it wouldn't. We got to make sure in situations like that it doesn't affect the residents around, and that's why we do some of the things we do when it comes to the permit process. You know. No problem. Any other questions? Tomorrow. What mama don't know, don't hurt her. No. Well, thank you all for making the time. I believe that time is one of our most valuable resources, and I appreciate you guys giving us some of yours. I hope you found this was beneficial. Again, if there's something you want to ask about after, feel free. Keep an eye out. We're looking to share as much information as possible. One of the things that I'm doing that maybe everybody doesn't realize is I do something called On the Agenda. I do it on the Tuesday between the committee meetings and the council meetings. I'll cover what was discussed in the committee meeting, which always holds 2 weeks, and I do the what's going to happen at the council meeting the next night, and that's a reason to keep our residents informed. If you find a topic of interest, come to that council meeting and check it out. Make sure your voice is heard, because that's how democracy works. So I thank y'all for making the time. The next council meeting, the committee meeting is Monday, and the next council meeting is Wednesday the 30th. So every month we do a town hall. Leilani, where's my next one?
In September, it is.
September or August? None in August?
No, August, I'm sorry. I'm looking.
Yeah. So basically, I try to, it's hard to hit everywhere, so I try to hit a community a month. So in January, I was in Chauvin, in Dularge on August 19th. So
In Dularge, the recreation center.
yeah. So we try to hit the whole community, the whole parish as a whole. The content's kind of the same, but a lot of times people come to their meeting about, like we consider this the West Houma one. And in certain situations, again, whether we do exactly where we're at on the east side, we try to spread it out and make sure we hit as many places as possible. Well, across the parish. We look at it, if we do one a month, we try to hit 12 communities. And then, look, sometimes we'll get calls and somebody says, I need you at a neighborhood meeting. I need you to come speak to this community. We'll fulfill those requests every time we can, you know, so. Yes. So thank y'all again. If y'all have more questions and all, we'll hang out. And God bless. We appreciate y'all.